Welcome back to this, our second podcast of the week, and it's a doozy with La Liga and European giants Atletico Madrid set to converge in Glasgow for this Wednesday evening's Champions League match. I am delighted to welcome co-host of the Manera de Viva Atletico de Madrid podcast, Ricardo Menendez. Well,
Hello.
Ricky, how do I found you this evening?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm wearing
I'm
a bit of green as a tribute.
By the way, not the worst, not the worst. I like the Boston Celtics, so I like that.
How are you doing? It's really something worth mentioning to be able to get back with the buddies from Celtic, because despite how history paints our rivalry, in the history of Atletico Madrid, that match in particular, the match that we probably have completely different memories of, or what our grandparents or parents have told us.
Yeah.
It's considered one of the great matches in Atletico Madrid history, because it was such a fierce fight. It was such a fierce tie, and we really took it to the line, and we almost went away with that European Cup, and that was for us. That's the big one that we let slip, and we didn't come through to win it all the way.
Yeah.
Of all those rivals, I think that alongside Bayern Munich, Celtic are the big headliners of those of that year, of that season. So Celtic has a special place in our hearts. We've seen that match so many times that a match against Celtic is always a match that has this atmosphere of history and tradition.
Ricky, I'm sure we'll come on to it when we're talking about the chat. We'll have a wee chat about that. But I would say that your opinions come from the victor. The loser doesn't have these fantastic memories.
Yeah, that's true.
But like I said, we'll come back to that later. We'll have a good laugh and we'll get going. Right. So Ricky, it's traditional on the show for our new guests to introduce themselves. Tell us a wee bit about themselves. So, who is Ricky, and why does he support Atletico Madrid?
Well, I ran a website dedicated to Atletico Madrid called Esto es Atleti. This is Atleti in English, for a decade. And when we started to move on from that chapter, we wanted to start a podcast, and we got together with a very prestigious radio host from Radio Marca, called Juan Malamo, and along with the newsroom from Mundo Deportivo, one of the two big newspapers in Catalonia. Their newsroom in Madrid are part of our crew, and alongside with two of us that were on the Estos Atleti project, we started Maneras de Vivir, which is a translation of a way of living, and that's how we experience Atletico Madrid. It's a lifestyle, a way of living our lives in red and white.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I had a little look at one of your podcasts, and like you say, very professional, very, very. I mean, obviously, I didn't understand one word of it, but when I sat and I looked and I put subtitles on, it's a very classy podcast you're running there. I was jealous. See, I've got my little room.
Your corner looks great. I mean, from here.
Right, so Ricky, it's another tradition on the show to have a wee look back at the relative past. Just see how we end up in this situation, right? So, as always, anything I kind of bring up here you think's worth talking about, feel free to jump in and just kind of stop me. So I'm kind of just going to give, right? So, Club Atletico de Madrid, the Athletic Club of Madrid, the fourth most decorated Spanish club after neighbours Real Madrid, Barcelona and Athletic Club, with 33 major honours. More recently, of course, part of the big three of La Liga, winning the title as recently as 2021, and not having been out of the top three come the end of the season since 2011-12 season. Coincidentally, the season that Diego Simeone replaced Gregorio Manzano as the head of the coach of the side. And I'm sure we'll come to Diego in a minute. So the club play in the Metropolitano Stadium now for sponsorship reasons, called the Civitas Metropolitano, a 70,460 capacity all-seater stadium situated in the east side of the city, in the Rosas neighbourhood, formerly known as Le Pineta, with only a 20k capacity. It was upgraded in line with the 2016 Madrid Summer Olympic bid and was home of the club since 1923, but the club moved to the Estadio Vicente Calderón, which is more closer to Madrid Centre rather than Metropolitano. So in 2011, it was decided the club would seek a new home. The final match played by the club was in May 2017, a 3-1 win over Athletic Club. The final goal scored by Angel Correa. The club moved back to the Metropolitano. The first match, a 1-0 win over Malaga on the 16th December 2017. The winning goal scored by Antoine Griezmann. And I'm sure we'll come back to both of you guys as well. Right, so since Diego has been installed as Atletico Madrid manager, Atletico finished in third 7 times, finished in second place twice, and of course these 2 titles in 2014 and 21. In the same period, the club have a solitary Copa del Rey in the 2012-13 season. You won the Supercopa de España in 2014, but in Europe, he has transformed the club back into the heavyweight it was. 2 Champions League final defeats, both to neighbours Real, but 2 UEFA Europa Leagues in 2012 and 2018, and 2 UEFA Super Cups in 2012 and 2018. The turnaround since his introduction has been nothing short of outstanding, I would say.
It definitely, I mean, Diego Simeone's tenure is probably one of the, is going to be remembered when decades pass as probably the rebirth of the club. Because before that, Atletico had to fight with relegation, with extremely subpar ownership decisions taking place over and over again, with both the signings of the players and the management of the club. The club was relegated in 1999. Remained in Segunda for a year. Diego Simeone had been a player on the team in 1994 to 1997, and he left the club, but he was always a chant that remained in the stands. Whenever there's a chant for Diego Simeone, you'll probably hear it when you come here because it's one of the most popular chants. It's Ole, 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 Cholo Simeone. Cholo is like his nickname. And the stands just go wild when they go into that repeated sequence of hailing what was their star player in the back, not because he was specially the best player they had ever seen play, because Atletico Madrid has had very, very good players like Luis Aragonés or Paulo Futre or Antoine Griezmann. It's because of the passion that he brings to the game. And Diego Simeone is a coach with the same capacity to transfer that passion to the stands than he was as a player. He's a natural-born leader, and he's brought something that people really missed at Atletico Madrid, the sense of pride, the sense of being proud of your team. That was something that we had lost so severely during the 80s and the 90s. We call them the dark years in among fans, and only after 2010, after Quique Sanchez Flores managed to conquer UEFA Europa League against Fulham in Hamburg, did we start to see any kind of hint of transformation. Quique Sanchez Flores' tenure was short-lived. The star players on that team were starting to resemble the importance of the team. We had lost Fernando Torres, but we had Kun Agüero, Sergio Agüero. We had Diego Forlan, Maxi Rodriguez, players that resound for players that for fans that follow a Premier League or European competition. But it was very difficult to retain that talent because it was just a constant influx and losing of the key players. And thanks to Diego Simeone, the team started to reinforce, and it's been the most successful period. I think that we're living part of the most successful period. This Atletico Madrid of Cholo Simeone has had to compete against Messi's Barcelona and against Cristiano Ronaldo's Real Madrid, and we come away with 2 leagues out of that. So just being able to win 2 leagues, taking 2 Champions League finals against Real Madrid, which are everything except infallible in those finals, and taking them to overtime and putting them against their limits and knowing that they got away with the 2 wins in the way they win. I would say we should probably get those 2 back. It just goes to show the amount of pride that has gone into being an Atletico de Madrid fan, and even though the big stadium is super nice, I still miss the tradition. When I look at pictures of Celtic Park, I feel nothing but jealousy and envy for that great stadium that you guys have, and I would like nothing more but to hold on to Vicente Calderón, because despite being a smaller stadium, it was much cuter. It really had that football atmosphere that we love so much. And I think that part of that is gone, but thanks to Simeone, we've retained part of that personality that Atletico Madrid had in the 60s and the 70s, and that brought us to the biggest stages, like the ones we're living these days.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Right, I'm going to fire through last season, right? So how do we get to this season? So last season, from my perspective, I'd like to hear your opinion. Last season wasn't a great one. In the league, another 3rd place finish, 38 games played, 23 wins, 8 draws, 7 defeats, 70 goals scored, 33 conceded. Goal difference of plus 37. 77 points on board, 1 behind Real Madrid in 2nd, but ultimately 11 points behind Barcelona. 6 points ahead of Real Sociedad in 4th, thus guaranteeing Champions League football once again. In the Copa del Rey, I already said that the recent history hasn't been great. A quarter-final defeat, again by Real, 3-1 after extra time, so disappointment in that tournament continue. But in the Champions League, I think the disappointment would be most felt. Drawing with Porto, Bayer Leverkusen and Club Brugge, an opening day win at home over Porto gave good hopes, but 2 defeats away to Bayern Brugge set alarm bells ringing, and then 2 more draws with the same opposition, this time at home, meant come the final match day with Europa League football at stake, matching Bayern's result in the match versus Brugge would see them qualify ahead of the German opponents. Yet a 2-1 defeat by Porto meant, in the sake of the head-to-head, Madrid departed Europe completely. So Ricky, give me your thoughts on last season. A 3rd place in La Liga against the 2 giants, from the outside, seems it's fine, but Real Madrid didn't have a great season. Barcelona didn't start well. The cup was there for you. Champions League was a bit of a disaster. What was the thoughts of yourself? What were the thoughts of the general Atletico fan?
I mean, for the thing is that when you've created a standard that is so high after a decade of having such a successful tenure, and you're the reigning champion, you just can't go ahead and have the disastrous first half of season that Atletico de Madrid had, where they basically threw down the drain any hopes they might have of reconquering the Liga. The beginning was very, very irregular up to the World Cup. I think that here what has to be mentioned is that many fans felt a significant amount of disappointment with some of their key players because they did not show up until after the World Cup. Right. And you just saw a downhill performance where players were holding their best versions for their national teams, and some defeats were just shameful. The 0-2 defeat against Villarreal in the second match day in a home game, going to Leverkusen and falling against Leverkusen 2-0. Coming back the next match day and losing against Real Madrid, a home game, going back to Europe and losing against Club Brugge. It was just such a disastrous streak of games, and we were only in October. It was only the beginning of October, so we could sense that everything was starting to go downhill. We only normally see 1 or 2 defeats as a home team, and only a few more in away games. And I think that by match day maybe 12 of La Liga, we had already seen 3 Liga defeats and 3 Champions League defeats. It was just a disastrous performance and so out of character for everyone. And I think it was the first time in the entire decade of having Simeone as a head coach that we felt that he was at a loss. He was out of ideas, and he I think he humbled himself and admitted that he was going through a rough patch, and he really didn't know how to turn the situation around. That he would devote all his energy during the World Cup to bringing the situation around, and boy did he, because after the World Cup ended, the performance of the players started to, we got a complete change. And for example, Rodrigo de Paul's performance coming off a World Cup win, and Molina is one of the fullbacks that plays as a starter for Argentina as well. Also started to deliver a great performance. Something had happened with Antoine Griezmann. He was, that he's been back and forth between Atletico Madrid and Barcelona. He was on a loan deal, and because Atletico de Madrid had an agreement with Barcelona, this is how cheap Atletico de Madrid management is. He had an agreement with Barcelona that if Griezmann played more than 30 minutes, they would have to play a plus at the end of the season. So they were only playing him for 30 minutes. And they told Barcelona that they were going to play him 30 minutes every single match until the end of the season, unless they sat down and negotiated reducing the buyout clause, which Barcelona did because they were strapped for cash and they really had to sit down at the negotiating table. But that cost Atletico Madrid all of their possibilities in Europe, because without having Griezmann completely involved, he was just a secondary character in some of the biggest nights, and Atletico just lost all their opportunities with a combination of very bad football at times, very bad luck sometimes, and just the sheer atmosphere. It was just like a negative serendipity of situations that all came together to kick Atletico Madrid out of European competition. People thought of that as a humiliation because ending at the bottom of the Champions League stage group meant that they were out of Europa League for the season. So European games were over for the season. But I think that allowed the team to regain focus and to really focus on La Liga. And in the second half of La Liga, Simeone made a breakthrough that I think is fundamental to understanding Atletico Madrid this season. Atletico Madrid has been dubbed many things in the past. You know, the press in Spain is generally divided between press that support Real Madrid and press that support Barcelona. There is no middle ground for other teams like Sevilla, Valencia, or Atletico Madrid. So normally these teams are not as closely followed by reporters, and the media pundits will basically label the team and keep that label regardless of what's really happening on the pitch. At the beginning of Atletico Madrid's tenure, of Simeone's tenureship as Atletico Madrid head coach, he was very, very worried about creating a very strong team defensively. And the first season, Atletico Madrid was a cement block that was impenetrable. And that's what made Atletico Madrid recover part of its prestige from a very strong defensive point to start to develop their offensive game. but that's only that can only be considered the first or second season of Simeone. He's been in constant evolution. Set pieces became a very important part of that part because you didn't have such good quality players, so set pieces were very important. But that Atletico Madrid is over. That's an Atletico Madrid of the past. This Atletico Madrid has learned how to play in the style that is closer to what Barcelona does, for example, using Oblak not as a goalkeeper only, but as a central defender, and starting the play there, bringing the pressure to your box and trying to get your way out of that pressure through a position rather than just kicking the ball forward and getting rid of it. And I think that transformation that started after the World Cup is really coming to fruition in this season. And we're starting to see Atletico Madrid that is, I think, the most advanced evolution because Simeone has convinced some players that were not supposed to have that talent for passing the ball and doing that snooker-like type of game, a game of precision, and now opponents are facing an Atletico de Madrid that they weren't expecting, that is very good escaping pressure. And I think that the only Achilles heel that I'm seeing is that the rhythm of European matches is far superior to La Liga rhythm. La Liga has tended to slow down very much and is closer to the Brazilian league or to those leagues that are so boring to watch sometimes. And what Atletico Madrid feels sometimes in matches that they're completely outpaced. We played Feyenoord last week, and you could see that the players were just not able to follow the flow of the ball. And Simeone came out and said that was merit of how football is being played in Europe, and La Liga is probably falling behind in the quality and the tempo of the game. And we're Spain used to be a place where a high tempo game was a specialty, and now it's the opposite. We see very slow games, full of interruptions, and that makes Spanish teams struggle a lot more when they play European sides.
That's so interesting. The Spanish league was removed from, used to be on Sky, so they removed it from Sky, and now the La Liga is its own channel and it's on. You need to pay extra, so the coverage over here, you get some free games floating about, but not many. And in what your observation of Atletico is true of myself, because they aren't covered as much. You don't. I mean, we still hear Atletico Madrid don't like the ball and they like to put the press on, and you're telling me that's not how they play, and that's so interesting.
That's
so
the
interesting.
Previous version of Atletico Madrid.
This
is going to ask the ball. They're going to go. They're going to apply pressure if they think that's a weakness of the rival. They're going to wait for the rival to come, and they're going to move out of there. But don't expect them to kick the ball forward. Look for Morata in long distance balls. That's going to be a resource if they feel really outpaced. If they feel outpaced, they're going to start doing that. But if Atletico Madrid is able to pace itself correctly during the match and feel that they can take advantage of how they've been training this new style, they're going to go with that style all the way, because it's the new recognizable trait of Atletico Madrid in these recent days.
So interesting, Ricky. So interesting. Right, I've got two things I would like to ask you before we move on to this season, and one is concerning Diego Simeone. So now, I consider your club a giant. However, both of us recognise England's got lots of money, and England just drags everything. Now, has there been a point where Diego Simeone, has been attracted to going to England? And has there been a point where you expected him to depart the club?
Well, I mean, up to maybe one season or two ago, we couldn't see an end to the tenure of Simeone. he had very long-term contracts, like 5 or 6 years signed in advance, something that is absolutely unreal and unseen in other clubs. He was in that special category of Arsene Wenger and Ferguson, that kind of coaches. Nowadays, I can see that the end of line with Simeone is probably if Atletico Madrid is able to win the Champions League. I think that would be the last match coached by Simeone, whenever it comes, if that ever came. And it otherwise, before the Premier League, because he is not specially, I think Serie A would probably be more attractive for him, because he would probably get good offers from Lazio. He would get good offers from Juventus, Inter. He has special emotional ties to both Inter and Lazio. So if they're able to spend the cash, because Simeone has the salary of a superstar, he makes some serious money. So I can see only a couple of Serie A teams. The Premier League, I don't think he's specially attracted to that. He's always put off coaching the Argentinian national team, because I think he considers himself to be too young to take that step. He doesn't want to go down that path until he's a bit older in his career. And I wouldn't discard him trying a Spanish side that is smaller than Atletico Madrid to see if he can do it again in a smaller side. And I would say Sevilla is a team, because he played for Sevilla before moving to Atletico Madrid. So I would say probably one of the teams that he's emotionally attracted to are winning horses in this race when Simeone decides to leave. And if not, I would say United, because he loves to play against Pep Guardiola, and to have that rivalry rekindled. I think for him it would be something else. A big spender, a team that's able to spend significant amounts. I would see one of the current big players, but not the ones that are winning so much. So I would say I would say probably Manchester United would be one of the places where I can see him playing. He has a very good relationship, surprisingly, with David Beckham, despite their history in common. And I can see that happening. I can see it like an ironic nod to tradition and to their story.
That's very good. My next question, it touches on something you spoke about before. The financial situation of the club. Now, we've spoke about Simeone coming in and basically the club finishing third or better every season. Now, that means obviously guaranteed entry at the Champions League group stages every season. And I presume that since that's happened, the finances of the club have got a lot healthier.
Nope.
No?
Atletico is the Netflix of football clubs. It's more, falls farther and farther into debt, and really? It has no foreseeable future where it can escape debt. It is the most indebted company in Spain. As an organization, there is not a single company. Probably Real Madrid and Barcelona have a bigger debt, but they're still a club. They're not a company, so they have a way of concealing their financial figures. Of all of the organizations that have to report their income, Atletico is like 500 million euros into debts. Long term, that's a lot of money. You have to win a lot of trophies. You have to keep up the Simeone miracle for much longer. What has happened is that alongside this super successful spell, the owners have gotten extremely greedy, and the current owner, Miguel Ángel Gil, he's the majority shareholder, and the current president, he's the third biggest shareholder, Enrique Cerezo. they're in the Forbes list. They're not anywhere in the Forbes list. They're in the top 15 of the Forbes list.
Wow.
Both of them. Miguel Angel Gil is 7th on the Spanish Forbes list, and he's competing with people like the owner of Zara and Antonio Banderas and people that. So he's got that kind of cash. So you can only imagine that if Atletico is riding more and more into debt, and the owner is richer and richer, well, you know where all that money's going. Only imagine.
Wild. That is wild. Right. Well, amazing enough, that's a fantastic segue into next season, right? So generally when I do these shows, Ricky, I rhyme off every player who's came in and out, but I won't bore everybody and I won't keep you long, right? So I'll touch on the big name, right? So the club brought in around 100 million euros from selling big names like Jeffrey Kondogbia, Matheus Cunha, Renan Lodi, Sergio Carnello, Yannick Carrasco, and some big earners like Yao Felix, squad extra like Matt Doherty, and young hopefuls like Giuliano Simeone, all left on loans or were released. So incomings, the club picked up Kagla Soyuncu from relegated Leicester, Cesar Azipil. Apilicueta. No, I don't know what happened. Apilicueta from Chelsea, both on frees. They splashed out 2.7 million euros on Santiago Marinho, a 21-year-old Uruguayan centre-back from Racing Montevideo, and then around 5 million euros on Javi Galan, a 28-year-old left-back from Celta Vigo, and 6 million on Samu Omarodian, a 19-year-old Spanish under-21 cap from Granada, who was immediately sent out on loan to Alaves. Now, the biggest outlay was the agreed deal to bring back Antoine Griezmann, as we spoke about a minute ago, permanently for around 20 million euros. Now, considering what you've just said to me, and I believe the club is kind of hamstrung with the La Liga rules on spending.
Yes.
It's for a club of your size to be spending a lot less than you bring in. It's quite a thing. It's quite a thing to see. Is that basically because of the constrictions put on by the league?
Atleti currently ranks, I think, number 1 in the European clubs that have sold the most for the biggest amount of money over the past 20 seasons. It ranks 46 in spending. So that difference between big sellers and moderate spenders, that also speaks about the Simeone miracle, and that's why he gets big cash from the big bosses. He gets a very hefty salary because he's able to turn rocks into football players and to sell them at a very healthy price. Besides Joao Felix, Atletico hasn't had big signings where they've lost a ton of money. Maybe Tomás Lemar is the other case where Atletico, and both are connected to the superstar agent Jorge Menendez, and I think that's no coincidence. Cristiano Ronaldo's agent, and that's one of the big ifs with Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid is always in these shady deals with agents, and Jorge Menendez is behind this. So are those numbers that you gave me real, or are they just fan fiction? You never know, because they give totals of what they've spent, but they don't break down those amounts. Those are rumored amounts, leaked amounts, but it's never official information. Since nothing is transparent to Atletico Madrid management, it creates this situation of not trusting the ownerships with having the club's interest in their own best interest. So since a club doesn't come first, you can imagine that some of these players that have come here, like Santiago Mourinho for a big amount of money, Samu Morodian, and that have been sent away on loan deals, you don't really know if they're sent on loan deals to develop them or to just fatten the cow and sell it for an even higher price somewhere else. And it's very difficult to struggle and competing against Barcelona and Real Madrid, not any any other teams.
That's mad. That is absolutely mad. Because I mean, in this time, like you just said to me earlier on, this is potentially, arguably, Atletico Madrid's greatest spell and so much potential. And it seems somebody's just draining all the goodness out of it. It's mad.
The management knows that the big bucks, the big money, comes through Champions League. Mm-hmm. So the prime objective is to get the team inside the first 4 positions of La Liga to play Champions League the following season. That's a prime objective. The second objective is to reach quarterfinals, where all the big money starts to be given out to the teams. That's a second objective. Simeone has fulfilled both objectives and he's only asked to do one of them. He's fulfilled both of them in 8 out of his 11 seasons. He's fulfilled at least one in all of his seasons. He's always been top 3 of La Liga, which Atletico had only been 7 times before Simeone was there. 7 times besides winning La Liga. So this is really a matter where Simeone is a bit complicit with the situation, but at the same time he's the hero that keeps you there. So you can't be mad at him, and the owners just don't want more. They don't want the complication of having to constantly be fighting to be top 4 of Europe. They want top 16. Top 16 is great for them. Top 16 brings in the big cash, and top 3 of La Liga, top 16 of Champions League, that's enough for them. So that lack of ambition is what is holding Atletico Madrid back, and fans really are disappointed with that, because, for example, this season was a season where you're in a win now kind of situation. You can get a good striker, someone. I'm not going to say you can aspire to sign someone like Haaland, but you can maybe aspire to get Vlahovic out of Turin, or you can sign an important player, Lautaro out of Inter Milan, one of these big names, and rekindle that aspiration of conquering the European trophy. Atletico Madrid needed to solidify one position in the midfield. No one came in that position. We needed a defensive midfielder. No one came in that position. So Atletico Madrid right now has 2 enormous gaps that they're trying to cover with Morata. Morata's a 12-goal per season player on average, and right now he's playing the season of his life. He's scored with the national team at Atletico Madrid in, I think it's 9 out of the 11 games that he's played. He's got the best numbers of his whole career, but that's you can't hold on to making players overperform constantly, because it's not going to work. Coque, Rodrigo de Paul, one of the youth talents like Barrio, they're having to cover positions that they're not used to playing in, because it just doesn't have the pieces. So he just repurposes players in positions that they weren't meant to play, and you have Llorente playing outside of his natural position, Axel Witsel playing out of his natural position, you have Coque playing out of his natural position, Rodrigo de Paul playing. So half of the team is like repurposing and trying to. You feel like you're on a boat and it's full of leaks, and you're just trying to cover the biggest leaks and not getting the boat to sink. But they're telling you, no, you have to win the race. It's not, the goal is not sinking. It's winning the race, and you're saying, how can I win the race with this boat? I need another boat.
mad. That's mega. I can't get my head around that at all. I've got to admit,
and that's La Liga for you. That's La Liga in a nutshell, because every single team is playing with that same set of constraints because of the fair play system. And I guess it was necessary, but it's just cash strapped between so much that they have lost any sense of competitiveness. Premier League, Serie A, Bundesliga. Even League One are spending more money. The Turkish league has spent more money than La Liga this season. Of course, the Arabian League, but I mean, there are like 7 big leagues that are spending more money. sooner or later, the big talent, the big names of the Spanish league are going to go somewhere else because it's not enough to be a homegrown player to stay playing for your team. There has to be something else.
Yeah, I agree. So you've touched on a few guys there. So I'll rattle through just the bigger names, right? So Jan Oblak, consistently one of the best keepers in Europe. Stefan Savic, a guy I remember got signing for Manchester City as a kid. I think he's a great player. Rodrigo de Paul, I think the ultimate Diego Simeone player. Saul Niguez, Memphis, Correa, who I mentioned earlier. Coco, Witzel even coming back. I mean, I like Borussia Dortmund, and I thought he was done leaving Borussia Dortmund, and he's turned up with you guys. Morata, as you say, having the season of his life, and of course Griezmann himself. So they're all the big names, and generally they're the crust of the squad. Who's the heartbeat of the team? I mean, I've thrown in the main names, but who am I missing? Who's unheralded in that team?
There's like a let's say a column of players that are crucial for the team to work.
Yeah, the spine.
I think it would start with Oblak. He's won so many games for Atletico Madrid that were very, very close games. Those 1-0, 0-1. I think he reached. I don't want to say the amount because I'll probably be wrong by 100 up or 100. He has the biggest percentage of clean sheets in La Liga history, and his performance with Atletico Madrid. You said he's one of the best players in Europe. In my opinion, he's probably a constant candidate to be the best goalkeeper of the world. I think that he's deserved to have that recognition at least 2 of the last 5 seasons. I would not change him for any other goalkeeper in the world right now. Whoever you name, that is one of the Atletico Madrid's superstars that has won so many matches for Atletico Madrid. The defense is one of the big problems, and the problem is basically age, and the other one are injuries. It's an injury-prone line with players that are reaching their expiry date, and Stefan Savic is one of the names that comes to mind. Azpilicueta has been signed at the end of his career, and Atletico Madrid has been chasing and dreaming of signing Azpilicueta for half of his career. The problem when he came, he's a year or 2 older than what he should have been when you really want to compete at the level that Atletico Madrid expects to compete. Jimenez, the other center back, very, very prone to injury. Mario Hermoso is a Russian roulette. He can have the game of his life, or he can be a complete disaster. Harry Maguire style, Harry Maguire, or he can be Beckenbauer. You never know which Hermoso you're getting. For me, the second important player besides Jan Oblak is Koke. Koke is the most underrated player in Spanish football. Yeah. Atletico Madrid has played 16 games this season, 8 with Koke and 8 with Koke injured. They've won 1 game out of 8 with Koke injured, and they won 8 games with Koke. That's the stat that you need. If Koke is on the pitch, the team works. The team
Ricky,
has so many
possibilities. I hope Koke gets injured this week.
You need a sniper for Koke. and Antoine Griezmann is a superstar of this team. He's probably one of the those players that you do see being in Ballon d'Or contention. Atletico de Madrid hasn't had many of those in their history, and Antoine Griezmann is one of those players. In my opinion, when he won the World Cup, he should have won the Ballon d'Or, but the media here in Madrid pressed for Modric very hard, and they got away with it. They've gotten away with so many of those fake trophies. It seems to be like the Golden Globes now. You can buy one if you try hard enough. And I would say those 3 players are the key players to follow: Antoine Griezmann, Koke, and Oblak. All the rest play to the beat of those three players. If those three players are having their day, the rest works better. Samulino is a new addition. He's been on loan in Valencia for one season. Spectacular player. He's made the stands forget about a player of the caliber of Yannick Carrasco in only a matter of months. And that's an incredible feat. Nobody counted on that, and that's a big surprise of this season. The up-team miracle of the Simeone era is turning someone who was a nobody 2 seasons ago, Samulino, into someone who starts to look like a superstar and has that superstar kind of performance, and especially the poise. You see a kind of poise and attitude that you only see in certain players. Like, you know, they're going to be good for an amount of seasons, and I'm really surprised because I wasn't expecting that. Some of the youth talent is very promising, but I think they're still greenish. Rodrigo Riquelme is a really interesting player. So is Barrios. I think they still need to accumulate experience and find their space in the team. And the rest of the team normally is planned around those players. Saul gets more playtime or less playtime. He had an incredible beginning of his career. He went from being a hero to being a zero on the team with an enormous salary. He has one of the highest salaries on the squad. So it was terrible to have such a well-played player playing so little and contributing so little to Atletico Madrid. He was out of the starting 11 for several seasons. He moved to Chelsea on a loan deal. It didn't work because the same problems he had at Atletico Madrid he was having there at London. I think it's a bit of a mentality thing because the kid is really good. And now in his second spell in Atletico Madrid, I think he's finding his pace and he's coming back to that initial performance. So Saul can be a very interesting player. He's one of the overperformers in Champions League games. So you should especially mark Saul to be one of the performers of the games that we play one against the other, because he always plays well in Champions League. Rodrigo de Paul is a mystery. If it's immediately after a game with Argentina, he's going to be garbage, hot trash. If he's had time to rest and forget his bromance with Messi, he's back to being the player he is, and he's in good football shape. But it takes him time to go back. Every European break just destroys the dynamic of the team. It's like very, very disruptive for the team. It's great to have these good players because they play for their national teams, but it's terrible to loan them out because when they come back, you're just playing terrible games for 2 or 3 weeks until they get back into their Atletico mentality, their club mentality.
Mad. Brilliant, excellent, mate. Okay, this season, Atletico have played 8 games in the league as we speak, currently sitting in 4th position. Opening day win over Granada, 3-1, was followed by a 0-0 in Seville versus Betis. A 7-0 humping of Rayo Vallecano in Madrid with 6 different scorers on the night was followed by a 3-0 away defeat to Valencia. A 3-1 win in the Madrid derby, and then a 2-0 win over Osasuna, a comeback 3-2 win over Cadiz, and a late 2-1 exciting win over Real Sociedad, both at home, meaning that you have 19 points from 8 games, 6 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat, a point behind Barcelona in 3rd, 2 ahead of Athletic Club in 5th, but 5 points from a Jude Bellingham-inspired Real Madrid in top spot. Now, this is something I would like to get your information about. In the Supercopa de España, the club will take on Real in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia in January. Now, I was talking to Vittorio, the Lazio fan, a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that the Italian Super Cup brings in the winner around 20 million euros because it's played in Saudi Arabia. Is your Super Cup the same?
No, it's worse. It brings big cash for Real Madrid and Barcelona, and that's sealed in a contract. Arabians want to see Real Madrid and Barcelona, so if they don't qualify, the Spanish FA gets less money. So you can, and they're the ones that they're sending the referees to the stadiums every weekend. So you can imagine what a sense of a rigged system it is. Is it really rigged? And by the way, the holder of the rights of the Supercopa, the Spanish FA sold them to Gerard Piqué while he was still a player of Barcelona. You know that Piqué has a company. He organizes a Mickey Mouse league called Kings League, and he also has a company that had the Davis Cup and some tennis businesses. He bought the rights to the Super Cup while he was still playing for Barcelona, and he decided that Arabians wanted to see Real Madrid and Barca, so he negotiated a premium for those two teams being there. So the other two teams are like they get a golden ticket to spend some time with the big guns. So it's a really rigged competition. Out of all of the sense of everything being rigged in life, I mean that's as big as it gets. It's a terrible situation.
To see
all of this information was leaked to the press. They published it, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. The FA president was only sacked after that incident, kissing the player in the World Cup final. So you can imagine it's an incredible situation.
You're not kidding, mate. You're not kidding. Right. Okay. So in the Champions League, the team was paired with Feyenoord and top seed Lazio, and of course ourselves, Celtic. The first match, Madrid overcame some heavy Italian pressure to lead in the final minute, only to see the game drawn after the Lazio keeper Provedels equalised. Then in match day 2, again surviving an onslaught by the Dutch champs Feyenoord, going behind twice, only to equalise twice in the first half, and then to win the game early in the second half. So as match day 3 arrives, Atletico sit top of the pile because of goals scored, 4 points from 2 games, alongside Lazio, same goal difference. Then we have Feyenoord with 3 points and lowly Celtic sitting at the bottom looking at the stars. Now, with all the games in mind, how has the team been looking domestically? And then how's it been looking European-wise? You touched on it earlier. What's the style of the team right now? With guys like João Felix leaving, there's a narrative within Britain that he's turning back into a team of hard workers and he doesn't need these flair players. I mean, is that fair? You've already kind of touched on it, but just to put a wee bit more meat on it.
Mm-hmm. No, it's exactly what I told you before. Atletico Madrid has struggled tremendously as a European side. It hasn't felt comfortable playing any of its European matches, and I think the scores of those 2 games are a visual demonstration of how Atletico is struggling to defend these European sides. It's struggling to keep a competitive pace in these matches, and even though the Lazio incident was a 1 in a million kind of situations that every team suffers sooner or later, it's one of those ridiculous situations that you never want to be in one of those games. But because it was a 97th minute goal, I think, if I'm not mistaken, final play of the game. As a domestic side in La Liga, I think that Atletico has performed well, but there have been some flukes in the system. Normally after European matches, for example, the Valencia game was especially out of character for Atletico Madrid. They got whooped in every sense of the word, on the field and the attitude and the performance of the team. I think that the Betis draw was just the moment of the season. It was very early in the season. The crazy habit of La Liga of scheduling games mid-August. It's crazy to play in Spain mid-August. The competition should start mid-February. I mean mid-September, if anything. And outside of that, The Lazio disappointment was more than quenched by winning Real Madrid. That gives you bragging rights for at least half a season. Big laughs on those that think they're going to win every single game of the season, and it's been in general positive, even though the performances have been back and forth. They played a terrible game against Osasuna. They got away miraculously with a win, and they got things done barely against Cadiz. They were more convincing against Feyenoord a bit, but again, that problem of the tempo and all that, and the Real Sociedad win started to look like Atletico Madrid again. But then we went with the national teams, and now we're back to who knows what's going to happen against Celta. If it is going to be the performing Atletico Madrid or the underperforming Atletico Madrid. You never know after these European breaks.
Okay, interesting. So, see when the European draw was made, what was the thinking within the club and within the support, more pertinently, to be honest? Because however well Feyenoord are playing, Feyenoord are still the weakest seed anyone could have got. And obviously, in Celtic aren't a particularly tough team in top four. So was the thinking a great group to qualify, a great group to kick on and maybe make an indent? Was that the thinking?
Atletico has consistently underperformed in group stages. So there's never a draw that we'll walk away with saying this is going to be easy peasy, a walk in the park. That's never the attitude, especially among fans, because we've seen Karabag win a home game against Atletico Madrid in Champions League. After you see something like that, I mean, how I could not even place Karabag on a map, let alone talk about their football tradition. So Atletico Madrid has not been a performer in Champions League, especially in the stage, in the group stage. I think that when the tie stage comes along, Atletico is in a better moment of the season. They tend to have a severe hump around mid-November, and sometimes it goes into January. That sometimes jeopardizes Atletico Madrid's possibilities to qualify for the tie stage. Mostly they get the job done, but I cannot remember any easy season recently where Atletico Madrid has just thought, I've got this done. After 3 match days, it's just getting the work done and getting the points and moving on to the next target. Very rarely is Atletico Madrid performing at the level of expectations of how far they normally go into. They go very deep into these competitions, but they struggle. It's a kind of a stumbling kind of start, and then they find some pace mid-January or February if they have survived that initial tossing around that we normally get.
So an extension of that then, what is the thinking about this trip to Glasgow? Bearing in mind that Celtic have lost both games, maybe unfortunately against Lazio, I would think we deserved at least a draw in the game. Again, another 97th minute goal for Lazio. And then the Feyenoord game was a lot of self-harm by Celtic rather than anything Feyenoord were doing. So what is the thoughts in Spain and in Madrid coming to Glasgow?
Yeah, the idea that Atletico Madrid has is that Feyenoord could be the weaker side of the link, but after playing them, we don't have that feeling anymore. So I think that the players, at least, and the team is going to be on the side of caution, of not giving anything for granted, and knowing that European matches are not easily translatable to how well those teams are doing in their domestic competitions, or how well they've done so far in the stage, in the group stage, because we've just been I mean, last season was so embarrassing. The way of exiting the competition in the very last minute, with a penalty, in stoppage time, sent. It was missed by Carrasco, who is normally very, very reliable in that sense. So after that amount of drama that we've lived through, in general, fans, I think already, they want to play Champions League, they want to win the fucking thing, but they don't like the competition that much. They probably want to win the cup and throw it to the Manzanares River. That's probably what they want to do with the cup. Not keep it in the trophy case. It's like,
I can understand the amount of hurt,
competition.
the amount of hurt that Atletico Madrid have went through in European Cup, Champions League. I can understand why.
It's a bit of a heartthrob story.
Yeah, definite. I mean, I'm sure there was a stat that in the two finals or the three finals they played, they were only behind for minutes at a time. It was never. It was
no during regulation time. They were never behind.
Never behind. Jeez. I'm laughing, but that's mental.
Yeah, it's mental. As cruel as it gets.
Okay, right. So we'll come back. We're on the home straight here, mate. Right. So we have previously played each other on 3 occasions. Of course, as we spoke about, we have the first meeting in Glasgow, a 0-0 game at Celtic Park on the 10th of April 1974, in the first leg of the European Cup semi-final. The return match, of course, a 2-0 win for the home side. Jose Garate and Adelardo with the goals late in the game. Then we played in the Cup Winners' Cup first round in the 1985-86 season. A 1-1 draw in Madrid in September was followed by a 2-1 win for Atletico. Quique Setién with all 3 goals for the Spanish, and Roy Ayton and somebody else scored a goal for Celtic, but we don't talk about him. More recently in the Europa League Group I, in 2011-12, on their way to winning the trophy, Atletico took the spoils in Madrid and Glasgow. Goals from the fantastic Radamel Falcao and the equally fantastic Diego in Madrid, and Arda Turan's strike in Glasgow. So that leads us to this Wednesday evening. With those games, obviously the games are irrelevant to what's going to happen this Wednesday. It's funny you talk about that game in 74 being so memorable for yourselves, getting to that first European Cup final. Like I said, in Glasgow, held in a totally different regard. And I've spoken to some people who played in the game, and they wouldn't be complimentary. But anyway, back to the game in hand. Tell me, what are your thoughts about this game coming up on Wednesday? How do you think Atletico will set up? How do you think they will approach the game? And ultimately, how do you think it will go?
Well, thinking, I remember back in 2011 when we played Celtic for the last time, we were expecting the game to be like a celebration of the shared history between the sides. And I remember covering that game as a reporter, and the enormous amount of hostility of both the players, the fans, and even the press, as if we had some unpunished issues that needed to be punished. And I remember the first leg of those 2 games that we played together. I remember Celtic being like kind of with a chip on their shoulder, trying to vindicate the sins of the past and trying to bring some justice to the world. It was an unexpected amount of animosity, and I think that fans that have that memory will normally be cautious and know that we were expecting like a friendly set of games and may the best win and all that. And all of those fair play commercials that we see before the matches. I'm not going to say it was a bloodbath, but it was a much rowdier match that we anticipated. I think that Simeone probably remembers that, and he's very good at doing the bulletin board kind of thing. If there is any kind of comments in the press talking about Atletico Madrid and how, for example, if somebody in the press tries to talk badly about Atletico Madrid, compare them to how they're the underdog of Madrid, or that's all going to be bulletin board material. So Simeone is going to try to find that motivation, because one of the things that Atletico de Madrid has lacked in Europe is its personality, the personality it carries as a badge, as a Liga team, and it is starting to get like generational respect from other teams. Other teams already know that they have to face Real Madrid and Barca, and that's almost like losing 6 points at the beginning of La Liga. But they know that they have to go to Metropolitano. They know that they have to play Atletico Madrid, and they're probably going to lose those points as well. So that kind of respect that Atletico Madrid has in La Liga, we don't have the feeling that we have that kind of respect in Europe. So I think that's one of the big chips on Simeone's shoulder of trying to get the team to be more respected and more recognizable. And I would expect Atletico Madrid to try to play their Liga version and try to bring it to the European stage, and try to prove that they can do that also with the big guns, starting with the group stage. So I would say there is not going to be any undervaluing Celtic, regardless of what the previous scores were. We've had a very, very bad time against Lazio and against Feyenoord. We're not in a position to underestimate anyone at all. So I would say there's going to be a big amount of respect and probably some mental mind tricks on the side of Simeone, trying to motivate the players to get them into the game and get them to perform.
That's interesting. So, how do you think it will go?
How do I think it'll go? I would expect. I mean, I would be happy with a draw in the match that we have to play you guys in Celtic Park. But I think that if Atletico Madrid wants to start to seal its qualification for the next stage, they have to think a bit bigger. Atletico Madrid has not been famous for thinking big in these cases, and they've tried to play it safe. So I would probably I would love to think that it would be possible to win Celtic Park, but I wouldn't think that anybody at Atletico Madrid would be unsatisfied if there was if they played a good game and there was a draw. And Metropolitano match is a different story. It's a different animal, and Atletico Madrid has the obligation of performing at home, regardless of the side. We've beat Real Madrid, which is one of the longest streaks of not being able to defeat Real Madrid. There were like 14 games in a row where we hadn't beat Real Madrid. So now that is out of the way, I think it's time to really seal that home advantage, and I would say 4 points would be acceptable. 6 points is probably the objective that the players have. They're trying to go for the 6 points.
Of course. Excellent. Right. Okay. Last two questions. Right. So, with that in mind, and how you described the club earlier on, what is your hopes for Atletico Madrid this season?
I think it's I really think that both Real Madrid and Barcelona are going to struggle this season because their squads are as half built and half baked as Atletico Madrid, and they're in a moment of weakness that we're not taking advantage of. I would like most of the effort to be on the domestic front and to try to fight that for that trophy. Atletico Madrid is in fourth position with 19 points, but they've played one match less. They have to play against Sevilla on December the 23rd. If that was a win, that would take Atletico Madrid 2 points away from Real Madrid, 1 point over Barcelona. That would be probably the prime objective. Fans are obsessed with the Champions League in that kind of sick way, because it's both an obsession of getting it out of the way, but also getting it done. And I think it's going to be a club obsession until either Simeone is out of the club or Atletico Madrid has won it once and for all, and they can get that monkey off their back.
Ricky, that has been outstanding. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I've learnt so much. I consider myself very ignorant after speaking to yourself, but I've really enjoyed it. Now, final question: where can the people find you on social media, and how can they follow you?
Well, they can follow me on X, on what we all still call Twitter, I think. My handle is Ricky AM, RICKYAM. I mostly talk about Atletico Madrid, and I'm a bit of an American football fan. I'm a big fan of the 49ers. So if people are interested in those two things, and they're into the San Francisco 49ers or Atletico Madrid, or they want just to have a bit of bantering with a Spanish fan and exchange some innocent banter and not get too personal. I'm open for anything that people want to send my way, and I want to thank you guys for inviting me to the podcast. I really hope the season goes the way you're expecting it, both in far. It's one of those teams that always has that sense of old school football, and we like those teams, and we root for them. So they're not our contenders all year long, so we can still root for them, and I hope your season goes as well as you expect it to go.
Amazing. Ricky Menendez, thank you very much, sir. Good luck for the season. I hope your team gets beat next week, but everything else goes well for you.
Exactly. Let me know if you're ever in Madrid, and we can have a couple of pints.
Oh, I'll maybe take you up on that. Thank you very much, my friend.
Take care. Goodbye.